Shalom, shalom, Shabbat shalom, brothers and sisters. My name is Moreh Rapha'Yah, and this Torah portion this morning will continue the yearly cycle of the Torah portion. It is very important for you to have a paper and pen so you can write things down, so you can do research in your own terms, in your own time. So let's start off with this Torah portion, which is called Wayigash. Wayigash means he draw near. So let's just begin with Parashat Wayigash. In this Parashat, chapter 44, all the way, verse 18, all the way to 47:27, Yen Yehuda Wayigash, which means approach or draw near him, and said, "Please, my master, let your servant tell you something in private, and do not be angry with your servant. For you are like Pharaoh himself." In this very, very beginning of this Torah portion, this Parashat, we are seeing that the 10 brothers are humbling themselves before Yosef. But in this case, Yehuda or Judah wanted to talk to him in private. Now, we know for a fact that he wanted to talk to him because he wanted to plead to Joseph about his brother, about Benjamin, and about what could be basically, if he plead, he was going to offer himself to be as a slave instead of his brother. So let's continue. Verse 24, and before we continue to the next phase, I just wanted to bring something very intriguing before I forget. When the harvest time comes, you will give 20% to Pharaoh, 80% will be yours to keep for seed to plant in the fields, as well as for your food and for the food of your houses and your little ones. If you notice from last week's Torah portion, we found out that Yosef, with the help of Yahweh, his inspiration, the Ruach HaKodesh, he was able to do a lot of things that no one in Egypt could actually even thought about. Just the proper management of the 7 years of what he perceived as preparation for all the abundance and the crops. Remember that there, as I mentioned before, the river was up to a certain height, because after the 7 years, the river Nile, and I've been in the river Nile myself, the river Nile was gonna dry it out completely, and if it was very little, not even for the crops or the seed to plant. So that tells you that's how bad became the 7 years of famine that came to the land of Egypt. Now, what he proposed to everyone, including the Pharaoh, is that everyone will give 20% to the government, to Egypt, and the 80 will be for them to keep. Now, let's continue before we jump back into Judah. Verse 41:34, Pharaoh must do this, and he must appoint overseers over the land to receive a 20% tax on the produce of the Misraim or Egypt land during the 7 years of plenty or abundance. Once again, we are seeing what he is proposing to Pharaoh and the government to do to make an abundance, to basically gather as much as they can, so they are able to sustain for the basically 14 years. Now, if you understand anything about the harvest or anything about the heartland, we understand that the grain itself, if it gets any moist, it would only last up to 2 years to 2.5 years. And this is what majority, according to the book of Yasher, it says very clear that they did not prepare, they did not oversee that, they did not see the future, thinking that that was going to happen about lasting the grain up to 7 years or even more so. The reason why is because the technology and the knowledge that Yahweh gave to Yosef was very advanced. Of course, he did not reveal his secret until it was already late. So here we know that, and I'm going to show you for a moment that how he did it and how he was able to maintain the grain up to so many years in a very dry environment, and also how this came to be about their brothers, about his father coming to the land of Egypt, asking for food, asking for grain. So let's continue. If you notice these silos in Egypt, these are the ones that Joseph actually have made. There are actually 11 of them. One that is right in the middle, it's the main one connected to all the 10 silos around the main silo. If you notice this rock hieroglyphics, this is exactly what the hieroglyphic says. The famine still is an inscription written in hieroglyphics located in Sahel Island in the Nile, near Aswan in Egypt, that speaks of the 7-year period of drought and famine during the reign of the 3rd dynasty King Dowser. Dowser is basically another name for Joseph. This still is believed to have been inscribed during the Ptolemaic dynasty, which rule from 332 to 31 BC. So if you notice, sometimes, as I always mentioned in the past, that some of these dates don't really correlate pretty much, and the reason for it is because Egyptologists and archaeologists don't want to admit that there was such a character as in the scriptures as Joseph or Moses or even our forefathers. So that's one of the reasons why they denied and changed basically the chronology on the scriptures and their chronology in their findings. So basically what we see is another name for Joseph, and let's continue so we can see pretty much. If you notice, this is basically in Aswan, and basically if you notice here, this is the entrance of the people that are coming from every single country to check themselves out, to register so they can get their grain out. If you notice here, this is just a frame or a picture how we can pretty much imagine how every country will enter. And of course Joseph's brothers actually went there. Inside you can pretty much see a little space there, and this is kind of like we can imagine how the person was taking care of the registering and taking note of every single person who was coming from every single country. You notice that the grain is pretty much ruined here, and the reason for it is because there is a lot of moist. Moist brings germs. Germs brings basically it really ruins the whole grain, and nothing will last. By the way, this is going to bring moist is going to bring animals, critters, and this is what you see here. Not only you'll see all kinds of insects that the moist will bring. And of course, this is not be good for human consumption, neither for animal either. If you notice here in the hieroglyphics, you can pretty much see how every worker will be working around the silos, bringing the grain in so they can store it for the 7 years. And of course, after that. Here we can see pretty much a graphic that will connect the main silo here in the middle and the 11 silos around it that will connect all of them all the way to the main silo. Once again, This is exactly what Yahweh revealed to Yosef, how he could manage the gathering of all the grain. And by the way, these silos are not on top, because like even today in America, you can see pretty much silos that are on top. They're cylinder silos, more advanced of course, but back in the day that was very advanced. These silos were underground in a the way he constructed, built it, he was able to maintain the temperature and the dryness of the grain. So that's why it lasted for a long time. Comparing to other Egyptians that were trying to gather their grain, of course they ruined because they didn't know how to manage the longevity of the grain all the way to 14 years. Imagine, not even 3, it was 2.5 to 2.5. This is another way, another frame, another point of view, how you can pretty much see the silos and how they were able to build this for a long term. Chapter 45:22 of Genesis, to each of them he gave a change of a new clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothes. Now let's stop here for a moment. Here we see something very important. After Yosef revealed himself to their brothers, we pretty much see that, remember when they tore their clothes? If you read it in the Torah, the Torah says very clear that they tore their clothes as a sign of grief. Remember when they took Benjamin? Remember that they tore their clothes? And the reason for it is because there was a sign of atonement, a sign of grief. And basically, here in this verse, Yosef is giving each one of them a new set of clothes. And the reason for it is because they were all torn apart. You just imagine all 10 of them, their clothes all torn apart. Of course, his brother is going to give him new clothes. But let's see something that is encoded in the Torah, because like I always stated over and over again, there's always something encoded in the Torah, and why he gave a certain number of what he made them think, and also how it makes us think today about what the Creator is trying to tell us. So let's just jump into it. Chapter 44, verse 13, if you notice here, at these they tore their clothes because of the pain, and then each one of them loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. Here, remember what happened when they got their brother Benjamin? They would not leave until his brother was with them. That's why they returned to the city, because they needed to plead to Joseph to give their brother back. Now let's jump into the 5 set of clothing. 1, because of the garment they have torn in her, and 2, because he was full brother, his mother's son. 3 sets of as a compensation for having done so, appears as a thief, and 2 last established as a penalty that a thief has to pay, that is double the value of the goods he has stolen. So all this is the meaning of what Yosef gave to their brothers, and there was a way to tell them, hey, this is what you did in the past. So let's just put them all together. 30 pieces to each one of them. That means the Torah says that a slave, you have to give him 30. You could pay 30 shekels for a slave. There were 10 of them, so 10 brothers. That means 10 times 30 becomes 300 shekels of silver, which means they became as a slave to Yosef. Now let's go into the next phase. Exodus or Shemot 21:32. If the ox gores a male or female slave, he will give 30 shekels of silver to his master, and the ox will be stoned. Do you notice here 30 shekels for slave? That's what the Torah says, and exactly what Yosef is doing to his brothers. Let's continue. 45:23 of Genesis. He also sent his father 10 donkeys loaded with the best products of Egypt, as well as 10 donkeys loaded with grain or cakes and food for the father to eat on the way. So basically what we're seeing here is basically something that is encoded within what he did or what he sent to his own brothers. Remember, how many brothers are going back? 11 of them, but 10 of them are for all the brothers that actually acted against Yosef. The donkeys became their brothers themselves. Let me stop here for a moment. Let me ask you something, brothers and sisters. What's the donkey or a mule for? What's their job? What's their task? Basically, a mule or a donkey is to carry something, carry a heavy load. You don't have to explain them anything. You just have to make them work. Basically, he's doing the same thing for Joseph's brothers. He's making them known that you're becoming like a donkey. Why? Because he's just doing the job. And basically, if you really think about it, their brothers became as a vessel, as a way to make things happen for Joseph. Why? Because it was destined to be in Egypt. He was destined to become the second of the king. He was destined to become basically the greatest above all his brothers. Let's continue. 10 male donkeys. The donkeys were in the indication that by selling Joseph, the 10 brothers were like the beast of burden, fulfilling someone else's purpose without understanding that is Yahweh have used them to bring about this salvation. Do you see that? Basically, brothers and sisters, each one of us becomes sometimes a vessel for something that's going to happen in the future for either for our own purpose, for our own life, or for someone else's purpose. So Yahweh always sees the future for each one of them. Sometimes we don't understand it. Sometimes we question things in our life. Sometimes we think, why is this happening? Because there is always a reason for it. Always ask yourselves, why is it that the Creator is doing this for? It has to be something greater than what I think it is. And believe me, there's always something greater than what we think it is. Because it's always the purpose of Yahweh, if we are in the Torah, to make things even better for us. So we just have to hang in there until the very end. 43 verse 8, Yehudah or Judas said to Jisrael his father, send the boy with me, and we will make preparations, go out, so that we may remain alive and not die, both us and you, and also our warehouse. Now here we see something very important. Judah or Yehudah is pleading from his father. If you guys remember that Shimeon said he also pleaded, but he didn't make any sense. He actually made things even worse. He even said to his father, just take my brother, my own sons, and kill them. It didn't make any sense. Why would you kill your own grandson? So that's why your father even refused to even to send his brother Benjamin. That's one of the reasons why Judah said make even better sense when he said all these words. Now I want you to see something very coded here, because this one yield to our Mashiach Yahushua, and I want you to see this. Verse 9, myself will be your guarantor, and the word is Echer Bonu. You can hold me accountable, and if I don't bring it back to you and put it in front of you, I will bear the guilt. The word is Wechatati. before you forever. Now we see two things, two Hebrew words here. The first one is echer benu, which is guarantor, and the second is wachatati, which means I will bear the guilt. This is something that is actually applying to Moses, and also is applying to ultimately to our Mashiach. Why? Because both of them were going to do exactly that. Moses was going to be the mediator between Yahweh and our fathers in Israel, in the desert, and also our Mashiach ultimately for all of us around the world. Once again, I want you to see the following. 44:32 of Genesis, now his servant gave as surely to my father as a guarantee for the boy, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the guilt. Once again, he mentioned that word, wechatati, before my father forever. Now, who is he saying this, and to whom? This is Judah basically saying the same thing he said to his father. He's saying it to Yosef. That's why he approached this to, that's what the word is, Wayigash, which means he's drawing near to Yosef, and he's pleading, making that request. 119, 122 of Psalms, be an assuredly or a guarantor, the word is arob, of your servant for good. Do not let the proud oppress me. And we can pretty much see this verse that there is a word that is called, that is basically, you can see it is arob. Arob is basically a guarantor. Somebody's guarantee something for the other person. Why? Because Yahweh is our greatest guarantor. Psalms 34 verse 6, Yahweh passed by before him and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh, Ayil, Rahum, Wechanun, and it says the rest, which is Yahweh, our creator, Yahweh, our pious, and compassionate, slow to anger, rich in favor, chesed, resignation, compassion, and in truth, emet. Here we see the 13 attributes of Yahweh. These are something that our creator is very compassionate, and the word is Wayabor. He passes by the sin of the tzaddik, the sin of the righteous. Why? Because he is slow to anger. Psalms 1:6-32. They outraged him in the waters of Meribah, and Moshe suffered on their account. You see that? This is one of the reasons why Moshe did not enter into the land of promised land. This is one of the reasons why he had to suffer in account or in behalf of our forefathers. I said one of the reasons, not the only reason. And the reason why is because he needed to bear the suffering of the people. The word that you see here is la'arob. La'arob means the promise or guarantee. Now, once again, this is yielding what it was, it will be also again. This is yielding to our Mashiach. Look at what it says. The word Arab means to give, to be a safety. Look at what it says, Hebrews 7:22. This too shows how much better is the berit or covenant, but by which Yahushua is a guarantor, which is once again echer benu. Echer benu means he's the guarantor. He's the guarantor that makes this happen for all of us. He is the one who's making the mediation for each one of us. He is the mediator for all of us by giving his blood. Now we see a clear picture of why Yehudah is making that Wayigash. He's approaching, he's drawing near, and I think it's something that we ought to see, which is for all of us to draw near to our Creator, to draw near to our Mashiach. Why? Because he will become the guarantor. He will become the mediator for all of us But the question is, are we willing to do so? Are you willing to do so, brothers and sisters? It is your will to make this happen. You have the power to do a lot of things, but it is a matter of choice. 2 Corinthians 5:21. Yahweh made this man who did not sin be an offering for our sin, so that in union with him we might share Yahweh's justification. You see that? Because of our Mashiach offering for our sin, Yahweh made this justification, make this happen, because one person, and that is Yahushua. Now, I want you to see something next in the Torah, something that you pretty much going to see it in the King James, which are totally wrong. If you go into the Hebrew, it's not going to say this. But let's jump into it, and because I took it from the Torah itself, and we're going to decode it the way it's supposed to. Now, before I show you this, brothers and sisters, Kohen HaGadol, which is the high priest, went inside the temple or the tent of the meeting. He needed to be in a perfect state. That perfect state needed to be not just outside, but also inside. It says the Torah is very clear when it talks about that. The Torah is very clear when it says that man needed to wash himself, get the garments, the set apart garments, the kadosh garments, and also he needed to be inside, in the inner self. He needed to be clean and purified. So both states had to be in that state, very high state. So when he entered into the most set apart place, then he needed to bring an offering. That offering was going to be in behalf of the people. Now, if you read the Torah, it's not going to say that. Well, actually, the translation, not the Torah. The translation of the Torah, because the wise or the scholars is trying to tell you and me that this is it. But when we find ourselves in the Torah, it says a complete, total, different translation. So now I'm going to bring it to you. Please write it down. You're free to check it out, that verse in Hebrew, and you'll find out that we're not bearing any lies. I want you to see this verse, brothers and sisters, and I want you to see that you can check it for yourself, that what we're bringing is not a lie. I want you to see it for yourself. Chapter 9, verse 7, and Moshe said to Aharon or Aaron, come to the altar, offer your guilt bearing, which is the word for chata, offering, and your burnt offering, and make an atonement, which is the word for kapar, on behalf, which is the word for ba'at, for the people. Do you see that? And made the people's offering an atonement, which is kapar, as Yahweh commanded. Do you see this here, brothers and sisters? Here we can see a pretty much clear picture that states very clear that it wasn't Moses' offering. It was on behalf of the people that he was offering this, but not himself. 46:26 of Genesis. All the souls that came with Jacob and Mizraim, Egypt, that came out of his loins, besides the wives and the sons of Jacob, even all the souls, there were 66. This is exactly what the Torah says. But if you notice in the scriptures, especially in the regular Masoretic texts, are basically states that there were 70. And also it says on the Septuagint, it says very clear that there were 75, not 70. So here, even the book of Acts in the New Testament says the same thing, 75 souls. 46:27, and the sons of Joseph were born to him in the land of Egypt. This is the Septuagint version, were 9 souls, and all the souls of the house of Jacob who came with Joseph to Egypt were 75 souls. You see that? Not 70. Now look at the version, the Septuagint version 46:20. These are the rest of the sons of Joseph. And there were children born to Joseph: Manasseh, Ephraim, Machir, Galad, Setulam, Ta'am, Edim. You see this? These are the sons of Joseph. Ezekiel 37:16. You, Ben Adam, son of man, take a rod and write it on it to Judah or Yehudah, the sons of Israel, his companions, the southern kingdom happens to be Benjamin. Then take another rod and write on it to Joseph, the rod of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel. This is the northern kingdom, by the way, his companions. Then join them together one with another, and they may become one, and they will be one in your hand. This is what our Creator is doing nowadays, brothers and sisters. This is what is happening, this explosion of Hebrew roots, Hebrew studies. And this is something that I was encouraged all of you to look for it. Why? Because it is necessary for each one of them, all the people, including ourselves, to wake up. There's no more time. We are living in the last generation. There is no time to waste, but instead to return to our Father, to return to the real Mashiach, not the Greco-Roman Messiah, that Jesus that had nothing to do with the Torah, but instead to the real Mashiach of the Torah. Now here in these verses, which happens to be the Haftorah, basically we see the two sticks, the two rods, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. This is what Yahweh is doing in this very moment. And it started off in 1998 when the beginning of that fulfillment of the two houses are coming to be fulfilled. John 10:16, and I also have other sheep that are not of this fold. I need to bring them, and they will hear. The word is Shema. Shema is not just to listen, brothers and sisters, and it also means to obey. Obey my voice. And there will be a flock and one leader, one roed. This is exactly what our Mashiach said. That's why he said it more than one time. He said, I did not come but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's one of the reasons why we need to pay attention to our Mashiach's words. Because it says a lot of things a lot of people don't understand. In order for us to understand the sayings of our Mashiach, or what he speaks of, we need to go back to the Torah to understand a lot of things that he said. Ezekiel 37:21, and you will tell them that he said to, so Yahweh, ye Almighty, behold, I will take the sons of Israel from among the nations to which they went. I will gather them from everywhere, and I will bring them to their land on land. Ezekiel 4:5. For I impose on your number of the days equal to the years on their punishment. For 390 days you will bear the punishment for the house of Israel, which is the northern kingdom. And when thou hast fulfilled these, thou shalt lie down again on thy right side, and bear the punishment of the house of Judah for 40 days. Remember, 1 day per year, right? Or year per day. I will teach you a day every year. Now, when was this fulfilled, brothers and sisters? We're almost closing, by the way. It was fulfilled the 390 days, which is basically when the northern kingdom were basically in exile to Assyria. When they were exiled to Assyria, the 390 days came, and then it was fulfilled. Yahweh sent prophets to return them, to call their northern kingdom back. They did not want to return. They were already immersed into idolatry. And one of the reasons why the Creator said, you don't want to come back to me? Okay. They forgot that in the Torah itself, in the book of Leviticus, it says very clear that if you don't obey my voice, I will punish you 7 times. If you do the math, 7 times 390, we'll see that next. And in the case of Judah, we see those 40 days was exactly after the Mashiach died, you count 40 years is exactly when the temple was destroyed. Now, let's continue. Ephraim happens to be on the right side, in the left side, and Judah on the right. Now, Ephraim's sin is to reject the kings, idolatry, and ignoring the Torah. Look at what it says in 2 Kings 15:18. He did what was cursed in the sight of Yahweh, and his life he did not turn from the sins of Jeroboam, the sons of Nebat, who led Israel to sin. This is exactly what happened to the northern kingdom. They were so idolatrous that they did not want to obey or listen to the prophets or either Yahweh. Ezekiel 4:5, I assign unto you one day per every year of their iniquity, so therefore the iniquity for the 390 days. So this is a math that we can come up with. The house of Israel, 7 times 390, it comes to 2,730 years of exile of the northern kingdom, which came about fulfillment, or to begin to be fulfilled in 1998, which, by the way, brothers and sisters, it happens to be a jubilee or a jubel in 1998. So what can we say about it? All this time that our forefathers were cast around the world, scattered around the world, now we are coming back. Now we are returning to our fathers' roots, the old path, the Torah. It is our duty, it is our responsibility to once again come back to Yahweh. Let's finish up with this. The sin of Judah, or our Jewish brothers, was pride, malice, jealousy, and hypocrisy. And this is exactly what happened in the first century. What do you think? They hated our Mashiach because of malice, because they were jealous, they were hypocrites, they were pride. Exactly what Mashiach said all the time, every time he spoke to the Sanhedrin, the high council. And exactly after that, 40 years later, exactly what happened to the temple. We close here, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for this, for taking your time to take a note of this. And once again, we'll see you next time with another amazing Torah portion. May Yahweh give you knowledge and assist you in everything that you do in your life. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah. We'll see you next time.